Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the channel Ian McLean Above and Beyond. Tonight's a pretty special night. I got a good friend with me this evening. Tony Bones Ledgem is an ex-fighter pilot from the Canadian Forces who did an exchange tour with the Royal Air Force. My background is F-18s, brief course on the F-5. I flew C-130 Hercules to start with. And so I'm just getting a bit of feedback here, so I'm going to have to work on that. There we go. I think I've got it sorted out now. I had too many windows open at once. Anyway, as I was saying, tonight we're joined by Tony Ledgem and also Kristen and her brother Remy are going to join us tonight. Remy is an 8-year-old and wants to be a pilot and would like to be able to ask some questions of ex-fighter pilots. So we're going to bring Remy into the conversation here soon. So I'll invite Tony into the studio first. And hey, Bones, how you doing?
Great to see you again, Manic.
Nice to see you, buddy. You might want to move just a little closer for your microphone. You're just a little bit hard to hear.
Yep.
And yeah, so you were saying earlier, we were talking, I was saying that Remy is going to be on the show tonight, and you were mentioning something earlier that could be of interest to him. We want to go ahead with that?
Yeah, well, let's wait till he's entered in, but this gets back to the air cadets, and I will explain that a little further once he's in there. But I need to know what his motivation is for being a pilot.
Yeah, okay, that's cool. His dad was kind enough to forward me some of the questions that he wants to ask. So without further ado, why don't we get Remy and Kristen onto the program, because that's really what we're here for. And we want to create an atmosphere where youngsters or anybody can come on and ask ex-fighter pilots, ex-snowbird pilots some questions, and we'd be happy to answer. It's sort of like being at an air show without the jets behind us.
Yeah.
So Remy, Kristen, welcome to the channel.
Hi.
Hi. It's really nice to have you here. So Remy, why don't you show us your hat and your shirt first of all, because I think Tony'd be pretty impressed. Look at that.
Nice.
You got an Air Force shirt and an Air Force hat. So Remy, how old are you?
8.
You're 8. And your dad told me that you really want to be a pilot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. So, you had some questions for Tony and I. So why don't you go ahead with one of your questions? We'll start off that way, and then Tony and I will try and answer some questions for you.
Question number 1. What is your call sign and how did you get it?
What is my call sign and how did I get it? So I'll tell you mine, and then Tony can tell you his. My call sign's Manic. I picked it up at my second fighter squadron, actually. My first fighter squadron, I was only there for a year, so I didn't really have a call sign. My second fighter squadron, I went to 441 Squadron after being on a ground job for about 3 years. And I was just so darn happy to be back in the cockpit and flying airplanes that I was a bit crazy and kind of went overboard on everything I did. So if some was good, more was better, and too much was just about right. So I ended up with the call sign Manic, and it has stuck for, I guess that was 1994. So 32 years I've been call sign Manic. And Tony Bones Ledgem, go ahead.
So this one's a bit boring. So when I was going through flight training, there was this song about Boney Maroney, and they started calling me Boney, which I hated. So I managed to steer that into Bones, as in Star Trek. And I don't know if you've ever seen Star Trek. That's probably a little before your time. But anyway, the doctor on Star Trek was called Bones, and I thought that was a little better than Boney.
You've always been Bones to me. So I think I remember briefly back in the Boney days, but yeah, there's some other great call signs out there. I got a friend whose name is Rob Mitchell. His call sign's Scratch. He got that because he came back from an air-to-air refueling hop one day, and he had a tip off. So when you try to put the probe into the drogue, the basket came off and hit his canopy. And when he walked in, he said the ground crew asked how the jet was, and he said, "Oh, it's fine. There's just a little scratch in the canopy." And it turned out he'd written off the canopy. The scratch was much bigger, and I think an F-18 canopy cost about a couple $100,000. So
Yeah.
so Rob Scratch Mitchell has been Rob Scratch Mitchell ever since. And just an interesting aside, Rob replaced me as Snowbird 7, and then he replaced me as Snowbird 1. So we'll maybe get Scratch on here one night talking to
Yeah,
us.
that would be great.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Yeah, great guy. And it'd be fun to have a couple of Snowbird guys and fighter guys together just talking about aviation. So Remy, go ahead with your second question. Hopefully we answered the first one.
What was your scariest flight in a C-130?
What was my scariest flight in a C-130?
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't so much scary as much it was quite a bit to handle. We were flying a United Nations mission from Islamabad in Pakistan to Srinagar in India. And I don't know if you know enough about those two countries, but they were at war a lot. They happened to be at war when we were doing this. And you're flying over the Himalayas. And shortly after takeoff, I was the aircraft commander. We lost a lock on our ramp door. And so the aircraft depressurized. So we had to put all the passengers on oxygen. And I asked the United Nations pilot with me what would happen if we turned back. And he said they'd have to suffer about a 3 to 4 day drive across the Himalayas, which were very dangerous and people could be killed doing it. So he would prefer if we could possibly keep going. So I said, in my 24-year-old brain, captain of an aircraft going across the Himalayas, okay, we'll keep going. And then there was a thunderstorm that happened to be right at the crossing point from Pakistan into India that was right in the middle of our path. And when we were talking to air traffic control, they don't do a normal handoff there. So they just, the Pakistanis just say, United Nations 303, good day. So we were about to contact India. And before we did, the first officer said, what do you want to do about the thunderstorm? And I said, well, we're going to go around it. And he said, but we don't really have clearance to go around it. And I said, I don't really care about clearance because we're not going through it. So let's go around it. So we went around it with everybody on oxygen up about 28,000 feet so that we wouldn't hit the mountains. And then we had to do a really scary approach into Srinagar in India in the Himalayas. So I was 24 years old managing all of that. And that's probably one of my most memorable flights on C-130s. Bones, you got a scary story for us?
Where do I start? No, I think the best answer to that one is that I've been in combat a couple of times, and I've been shot at. But the scariest stories for me were training for combat, because we trained very aggressively, and we flew ultra low level at very, very high speeds. And unfortunately, many of my friends crashed into the ground. And I think that's the point to take away from it. And I'm sure that Ian knows many friends as well who didn't survive. So it's not just combat that's a threat. It's also training for combat.
Yeah, that's the one thing about going into the pilot world, Remy, that you want to always keep in the back of your mind is that safety has to take priority over everything else. And I used to talk about this little voice in the back of my head. When the little voice was talking to me, anytime I ignored it, things got pretty exciting about 20 minutes later. So you always want to be safe before anything else. So that's about the scariest stuff we're gonna talk about tonight. Go ahead with your next question. What else have you got for us?
What's the coolest thing you've ever done in an F-18?
What's the coolest thing I've ever done in an F-18? Well, a couple of things. I really enjoyed flying in exercise Red Flag down in Nellis Air Force Base. That was where we launched probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 jets and had a mock war. And I remember leading 4 ships in that kind of a scenario. And the other thing that I was talking about with Tony just last week was I got to fire a real missile off of the F-18. We used to drop practice bombs and would use practice rockets all the time, but it was rare to get the opportunity to fire a live missile, and I was given that opportunity once down at Tyndall. Bones, what about you?
Well, that's a great lead in, because just before we deployed for the war in Kosovo, we were actually in the Canadian exercise called Maple Flag, and we got pulled out of that a week early because we had to deploy to Italy for the lead up into Kosovo. And those kind of exercises are very beneficial to train our pilots into the sort of big war scenario. So I was very appreciative of the fact that we at least had 1 week, not 2, but at least we had 1 week in the Maple Flag exercise.
Yeah, so not unlike in the movie Top Gun, where they talk about pilots learning how to be involved in combat during training missions. That's really what Exercise Maple Flag and Exercise Red Flag were designed to do, were to give pilots the ability to experience somewhere in the neighborhood of 14 to 20 hours of flight time simulating real combat conditions, or as real combat conditions as you can in peacetime. And I think it makes quite a difference when you have to deploy in wartime. So did you understand all that, Remy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what's your next question for us?
What is the most difficult snowbird maneuver?
Say it into the camera.
What is
Well,
the most
What's the most difficult snowbird maneuver? That's a really good question. There's things that we do on the snowbirds that are very difficult for pilots to do, that sometimes are not as appreciated on the ground as much with the degree of difficulty. So I'm going to talk to this from a Snowbird 7 point of view. That was when I flew outer left wing. And I can say that every position on the snowbirds has a nemesis. It has a maneuver that each and every position sort of dreads when you're the new guy on the team. And for the outers, the thing that we dreaded the most probably was the line abreast roll and loop. And especially for number 7, hanging on the outside left side of the line abreast roll and loop was very difficult. And here's a couple of reasons why. The wings are only 8 feet apart. You have to stay exactly on the same plane, on the same level as the guy beside you. You have to fly off lead, who's 2 aircraft away from you, so you're trying to get references there. And the formation is dumping down into you, and so you're using a lot of nose down trim and powering back with speed brakes. And if you don't get the speed brakes timed just right and the power coming on as you're coming out of the roll, you'll end up falling back from the formation, and you won't have the nice symmetrical look of the 5-plane line abreast that the snowbirds are known for in the line abreast roll and loop. And so for me, that was the most difficult thing as Snowbird 7. As Snowbird 1, the double take was very difficult. That was where 1 and 4 began the maneuver upright. So myself and the guy behind me were upright, and the inners would fly upside down. I would pull up, I would roll inverted with number 4 underneath me. So now the wingers were right side up and we were upside down. And then I'd push and then call smoke off now. The inners would get away from me, and then 1 and 4 and I would roll upright again. And that was all done at 300 feet, and that was called the double take. And that was probably the inners nemesis as far as their maneuvers when they joined the team. They had to learn to fly formation upside down, which is a bit of a challenge. So those were the two most difficult maneuvers that come to mind.
Pretty cool, hey? Mm-hmm.
Did you see, did the team do the double take this year? I'm not sure they're still doing it.
Remember? The guy announcing the thing didn't. He's kind of had a French accent, so I didn't know what they were doing.
Okay.
I don't understand them.
Didn't, okay. Okay, have you got some more questions for us?
Yeah. Why can't we use the F-18s as the new snowbird jets as once we get new jets?
Yeah, so you obviously have heard the snowbirds are going to go away for a
Yeah.
period of years now, and I know you're not happy about that. Your dad sent me comments about that.
Yeah, and then once they come back, they're going to be boring.
Yeah, once they come back, might be on different airplanes, so we don't know what kind of airplanes. I think the reason that they wouldn't use Hornets is, and Tony, jump in if you think I'm wrong here, but the cost of running a Hornet team, both in manpower and in dollars, would be beyond the capabilities of the Canadian Air Force. I don't think they'd be able to man a team of F-18 pilots like the Blue Angels, because you need a 6-ship, something like the Blues fly. And so I think the cost would be prohibitive. I think the maintenance time would be prohibitive. And I think the finding the actual manpower to substantiate a Hornet team would be very difficult. So I don't think it's ever been a realistic possibility that the Snowbirds would move to Hornets. I think more likely something like an M346 or some other kind of jet aircraft would be my preference, but I know they're talking about turboprop aircraft, so we'll have to see where they go.
If they do get turboprop, they're gonna be super boring because who wants to see propeller planes?
Well, that's kind of how I feel too. So we can only hope. I've got a bunch of friends that are involved in trying to move things along and see if we can get the Snowbirds to stay in place with maybe a reduced number of jets for the next 5 years while we wait for the replacement aircraft. And hopefully we'll get replacement aircraft. So Tony and I both think that if you want to be a pilot, one of the ways you might want to try and achieve it is through Air Cadets. My son was in Air Cadets for a couple of years. A lot of the pilots I served with were Air Cadets. Tony, I believe your sons were in Air Cadets.
Yeah, both my son and my daughter were in Air Cadets, and
Sorry.
I never even suggested it to them, let alone pressured them to do it. So they did it on their own volition, and they were very successful. But they didn't go through the flying program. So there's many different ways you can progress through Air Cadets, and the best thing you can do is go through the flying program, where they will pay for your private pilot's license.
Be cool.
And we're talking $15,000 to $20,000 worth of flying that the Air Cadets will pay for. So what a great opportunity! But
Yeah,
you
it
have
sure
to
is.
work. You have to work very, very hard to get there. Okay, it's very competitive.
So the other thing I was going to mention too, this was mentioned to me by a guidance counselor in high school when I said I wanted to be a pilot, and that's the military college route. So what you have to understand going into this, Remy, is that you can have the aptitude to be a pilot, but you're going to have to work really, really hard, and it's very competitive to get in the door, especially if you try and go the military college route. So your marks in school have to be very, very high. And so you have to work really, really hard in order to get your marks up as high as possible to give yourself the best opportunity to get into the military, into the officer role, and then into the pilot role, because it's quite competitive. So if you can do that and also be involved in some extracurricular activities, like Air Cadets, that goes a long way to helping you with your application to get into the military to become a pilot. But it's worth going through all of that because eventually the military will train you how to be a pilot and get you enough flying hours that you can eventually be a commercial pilot like Tony was. Because Tony went, and I don't know if you know this, he flew for Air Canada for a number of years. Tony, how long were you at Air Canada?
25 years.
Yeah, well,
After my military career.
after your military career.
Yeah, yeah.
So Tony's got tons of hours, and he flew with Air Canada. And the reason he was able to get his air transport pilot's license, and the reason I was able to get mine, was because we got our flying time in the military, and then we did our ATPLs and went on, had the ability to fly in the civilian world. So I hope we've answered all your questions tonight. It's been fun having you on. Do you have any more?
Oh,
I think that's pretty well it. Hey,
yeah.
what do you say
Oh.
for letting us join you?
Thank.
Hey, Remy, before you go, I've got a question for you.
What is it?
So what is your motivation to be a pilot?
Well, when I lived in Snow Lake, which I'm visiting right now, me and my dad were fishing when I was about 3, and then two F-18s were flying over the lake.
Okay.
Oh,
You thought it was pretty awesome, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, you too could be in that position if you work hard in school and if you get into the Air Cadets and you work hard in the Air Cadets. So I look forward to seeing you as a fighter pilot in about the next 20 years.
Maybe we'll look back on this broadcast one day and say, we knew Remy when he was only 8 years old, and now he's a snowbird pilot, or now he's an F-18 pilot. Wouldn't that be cool?
No, not an F-18 pilot, but an F-35 pilot.
Well, yeah, exactly. It won't be F-18s by that time. Hopefully, it'll be F-35s.
I hope not.
All right. Well, Kristen, Remy, thanks for joining us tonight. I'm going to take
You're
you out of
welcome.
the studio.
Thanks for having us.
And Kristen, I see you nodding quite a bit, so I think that you're totally appreciating what Ian is passing down. Is that correct?
Pretty neat.
Yeah.
It's good.
Awesome.
Well, thanks for joining us tonight. We'll probably get a chance to talk to you again sometime. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh,
That's okay.
I think I just cut him off there at the end. I had another question in the chat. I know every maneuver will have target entry and exit parameters for altitude and airspeed, but this is from an Aviation Station 85. This is a question, sorry.
So, hang on. Station 85?
Aviation Station 85. Does that mean something?
Yeah, Station 85 was a position on the F5. That was one of the wing positions. So we had Station 85 tanks. So I'm guessing this guy's got F5 experience. Yeah, but
okay.
Keep going. Let's go.
Okay, here's the question. I know every maneuver will have a target entry and exit parameters for altitude and airspeed, but were there any techniques that you used to maintain the consistent and predictable profiles needed? Cool. So this is a question from a Snowbird 1 perspective. And basically I tried to start every loop at minimum airspeed of 300 knots. I tried to have my power setting, I think somewhere around the 91 to 93% area. And then I would power up as much as possible, as much as I thought the guys could stand it. The Snowbird shows are flown at 300 feet above ground level. You don't start off that way. Initially, you obviously start off with a 2-plane up at 1,000 feet, and then work to a 3-plane, a 4-plane, up to a 6, and then eventually the 9. You do that at 1,000 feet, and then work down to 500, and then work down to 300 feet. But I'm going to talk about a show season loop. So a show season loop would be done at 300 feet above ground level to start, with an entry airspeed of 300 knots. And then the big thing is about leading the snowbirds is telegraphing. So I would call running in for a loop, 3 back, 2 back, 1 back, pulling up. And on the P and up, I would telegraph about 1.5 G. And just as my nose started traveling, so the wingmen were going with me, then I'd increase the pull quite rapidly to 3G. At that point, I'd call powering back, and I'd give the wingman 3% power back. And that's just to assist the guys that are at the back that are below you and outside of the loop as you go over the top. I get my him and me gloves out for a second. And so you power back, and over the top, I'd usually look for an airspeed somewhere around between 100 and 105 knots. Excuse me. And then on the backside, I'd call powering up in order to get the energy for the next maneuver that was follow on. And I'd watch how my altimeter was unwinding to make sure that I ended up at 300 feet. I'd call relaxing, and then the G would come off, and I'd call smoke off now. And that would just be a standard loop for the snowbirds. For rolls, very similar. Call 3 back, 2 back, 1 back, pulling up, powering back, rolling. Just telegraph the start of the roll and then feed the roll in. It's sort of like a big barrel roll. And then on the backside, call powering up. And then for the big diamond combo, it was the big diamond roll and then the loop. And so there was a power up, a power back, and another power up again, another power back, and then relaxing out of that, smoke off now, and then get into the next formation. So absolutely, there were parameters that we look for all the time. And one of the most challenging things is to fly snowbird show over the water, because there's very little references on the backside of loops over the water. So hopefully,
Could I interject?
Yeah, go ahead.
So there have been some horrendous F-18 crashes, vertical maneuvers, because at the top of the maneuver, they did not have the airspeed and the altitude, yet they continued. And you probably remember the crash at El Toro, and he was a full colonel that was flying the F-18 in the crash at El Toro, and he pancaked on the ground, and he actually survived. And it was just a miracle that he survived, but he did not have the altitude and the airspeed before he pulled through.
Yeah, and it's funny, the Thunderbirds I know have check altitudes at the top, and one of the guys misread his check altitude at the top one day in an F-16, similar thing, pancaked the jet in, ejected and survived that as well. I didn't really use top of loop altitudes as much because I knew the profile so well, and if I'd flown the profile starting with my 300 bills, and use my 3G pull up, then coming over the top, I knew I'd have enough G on the backside to be able to get the jets out at 300 feet above ground. The first time you take a formation down, though, and start doing loops and rolls, it's one thing to do a single ship loop at 300 feet because you can put on as much smash as you need and as much power anytime you need to get yourself out of it. But when you're leading a formation, it's another thing. It's another thing to be smooth enough for the guys to be able to follow you through that. So there's a real skill set involved. And luckily, the leads pass that on from one lead to the next. So as a new snowbird lead comes in, he flies with the outgoing lead during the last part of the show season. And then there's a tutorial period where you actually fly together and he shows you the profiles. And then it's up to you to have your building block process in place in order to be able to put together smooth and accurate aerobatics at 1,000 feet, and then eventually gradually step down to 500 and then 300 feet.
Who did you take over from?
Steve Will was the guy in front of me. So, and funny enough, years before that, when Swill was the guy that said, you should go and try out for the Snowbirds for Snowbird 7 position when I got that.
Oh, okay.
And then I said to him, wouldn't it be cool one day if you got to lead the Snowbirds and then I got to take over from you?
And there it goes. It happened.
And then Scratch, he took over from me as Snowbird 7, and then he took over from me as Snowbird 1. So that was kind of cool.
It's a small world, my friend.
It is a small world. Well, Bones, I've enjoyed the conversation tonight. We've managed to answer Remy's questions. I think that went pretty well. And for me, I'm learning as we go along with YouTube. I notice we're up to, we've only had 6 or 7 viewers, but what happens, it seems, is afterwards, the views get quite a bit higher after the fact. So we'll probably keep trying to do this if you're willing to join, and we'll just sort of talk aviation stories.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Yeah.
All right, buddy. I think we're going to call it a night for now. I don't see any more questions coming in on the chat at the moment. And we'll try and keep the advertising going and seeing if we can continue to build an audience going forward. So thanks again, Bones. And I'll put up a link for next week's live chat on Tuesday night if you're available.
Yeah, great work. Keep it
Okay.
keep it up.
Yep. Thanks, buddy. We'll talk to you. Bye-bye.